So we're back in Gayton, the beginning of June. We were here last right at the end of March after the cold winter, and now Alistair's going to just talk us through what's happened in the past 2 months and what are the prospects for these two crops. We're standing where we normally are. On one side we've got Maris Otter, on one side we've got Flagon. So Alistair, 2 months, what's happened?
Yeah, a huge amount, Bob. When we were last here, we had a very wet winter, as you know. We recorded about 30 inches of rain between end of September and mid-March, early March, which is more than we get annually, generally. So crops were sitting in water, they hadn't really rooted, they looked a bit sorry for themselves, and so we were looking forward to a good spring. Things have changed. We then had a sharp dry spell, the fear that we live in on light land, badly rooted crops confronted by a drought, and that's exactly what we had. March was very dry, April, or the latter part of March was very dry, April was very, very dry. Coming into May, we were in dust. These crops then, Flagon to the left, looked okay, a little bit of potential. The Otter, which is the other side of the track on the right, and you can really see the difference. Flagon's got more vigour, still quite an old variety, but not a particularly modern one, whereas Otter is, I think, 1963 vintage. And you can see it looks well, the two crops are starkly different. Beginning of May, where you'd expect crops to be looking fairly growthy, this crop here was absolutely flat on the ground. It was prostrate. Some areas were sticking up. They'd got stem erect. As they start to come to get preparation for ear, the leaf axils lengthen and up they go, and that was delayed, and it was just dust. And I'm beginning to wonder, what are we going to get from these crops? Are we going to face, as we did last year, really sharp dry following a wet winter and 25% yield reductions, 30 in some cases? Real problem, obviously, financially, and for the maltsters in terms of quality potentially. Thankfully it started the rain on the 1st of May, pretty much on the 1st of May. We had a little, and since then we've had 104 mil, 105 mil, so 4 inches of rain in May, which is not quite unprecedented, but it's a very wet month, and we're now full of growth. So these crops look now pretty promising. Temperatures have been very, very low. Not quite sure what that means. What I can say is that we know from past experience on this light land, if we get a check early on, there's usually an impact at harvest. Despite that, the crops look pretty promising. You see the Flagon, you can see it's now fully in ear. It's had its fungicides to keep green leaf over here. Green leaf is important. It's like any plant, converts sunlight into energy and into plant biomass. So that's what we're trying to do. It's keep the crop green. It is green, it's clean. And now we've had the rain, despite the low temperatures, looks quite promising. And the Otter on the right, again you can see the contrast, has caught up and again looks quite promising. The numbers of tillers, I don't think we lost too many tillers. That's numbers of ears per plant, as it were, numbers of stalks per plant. I don't think we lost too many. It does react to drought by killing off the weakest so that the strongest survive and the crop sets seed. That's what it's trying to do. I don't think we lost too many. I don't think grain sites we lost too many of those. So potentially I think we're on for a good to average crop, and things look transformed compared to when we last stood here.
Oh, okay, so let's just walk into the crops and have a quick look at them. So we're standing in the Flagon crop.
Yeah, so as I've said before, this was drilled behind maize. So not a great break, but it is a break. And it's looking now pretty promising. You can see the ears, it's just odd plant coming into flower. So we'll be in here in, let's say, 6 weeks or so, harvesting. And what's really important for us as well is, with the moisture, quite a bit of straw. You can see where it comes up to on me. Not huge amounts of straw, this is sand land, but it's really important for us because we do a straw for muck deal, and we get pig muck back on the land, which builds organic matter and fertility, and is a sustainable and natural source of nutrients. Really important to us. And the pig farm, for welfare, they need quite a lot of straw, so they're really pleased that we've had some rain and we've got quite a lot of straw. So all in all, it looks quite promising. I think it's probably enough moisture now to finish this crop if it doesn't rain anymore, which is good news.
Okay, so we now move from the Flagon field into the Marisota field. It's a lot of difference, Alistair.
It is, Bob. This nicely shows the difference between Flagon, which, as we say, is not a hugely high yielding variety, but very different modern genetics to otter. So in my left hand, here's the Flagon, and in my right, here's an ear of otter. And you can see the otter is much smaller. It's a lower yielding, very high quality premium crop, and that shows it pretty well. It's also much later. Well, the Flagon is full out in here, and you can see just here, this is what we call, it's just past paintbrush for obvious reasons. You can see these are the awns, which are the hairy bits on the ear, just coming through, and this is the flag leaf. Really important to keep all this clean. Flag leaf less important on barley, but what we need is green leaf and sunshine. We've got some sunshine coming next week, and you can see with the low temperatures, disease pressures have been quite low. This has had its first fungicide, hasn't had its second, which is pretty late, but only had its first on 5th of May. So it'll have a low dose to keep this clean through to harvest, and with sunshine next week, looks pretty promising. So as well as cropping, environment and wildlife habitat, really important to us. And just get my dog out of the way. You can see all the way down here, you look down, this is an avenue of trees that sweeps all the way down to the village, and all these oxeye daisy, which have just, you can see one in flower here. This will be a mass of oxeye daisy all the way down. Other things as well. You can see there's some achillea in flower, some Queen Anne's lace is already in flower. So, you know, this is really important. And we've also got an area of set-aside on the top of this field, old-fashioned fallow, which was destined to be removed. And because there's so much chicory comes out in a lovely blue flower and bees love it. There's also American sweet clover in here. There's also a lot of natural flora in here as well. So it's had a stay of execution, and that'll be alive with bees later in the year when perhaps there's not so much natural nectar around. And really important. One important thing to say is that glyphosate, which environmentalists have a hang-up, or some do, vitally important in the management of these things, that we can allow this, in arable terms, it gets really weedy, there's a bit of seed return, wonderful habitat, and we could tolerate that because we can clean it up with glyphosate. So just to make that point, it's not all bad, and it does enable a lot of environmental management.
Great. So Alistair, when we were here at the end of March, this was still half a field of sugar beet, and we had a broken down sugar beet harvester here.
Yeah.
What's happened since then?
This is quite a challenging field. This is that most joyous of things in farming world is wet light land. So we've got some wet spots in here that are difficult to deal with, but it dries out pretty quickly. So we had the beet harvester stuck, very poor crop of beet off here. So this crop of planet was drilled about end of March, quite a high seed rate, 200 kilos a hectare. We don't expect a lot of tillering, a lot of stalks per plant, as it were, because this crop grows so quickly. You think this was planted, let's say 31st of March, that wouldn't be far out. And we'll be harvesting this, mid-July. So it races through the growth stages. So you don't expect a lot of tillering, and we want that strong primary tiller with a big ear and bold grains. Actually, there are quite a lot of tillers on here, and it looks a thick, clean crop. It's had its first fungicide. We talked earlier about the need for green leaf. And actually this is Planet, useful variety, multi-purpose variety. It looks very promising. So from a pretty awful crop of sugar beet we were glad to see the back of. Nice to see a good crop of string bar. It does prove that there is value in sugar beet as a break crop. So high hopes for this crop.
So we've had this high amount of rainfall. If we had no more rainfall, the winter barley crops we've seen would probably go all the way through.
Yeah.
But the spring barley would probably want one in a month's time.
I think you're right. I think we might get through in yield terms. I think quality would be very, very poor. So particularly with all these tillers on this light ground to support this number of ears per square metre that we're likely to have, yeah, we're going to need one in, let's say, 20th of June to 30th of June would be nice. 20th of June probably, be perfect.
Okay, thanks.